Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I'm your host, Steph Sia, aka Kimchi on stage. You can not catch me anywhere right now because I actually don't know my schedule for July, which is when this episode is being released, but it is June, and yeah, I don't know what my schedule is. Don't ask me. It's all up in the air, but you can catch me on Streamate. I am streaming there regularly now, which is really great. So nice to have a somewhat normal-ish schedule again. So you could catch me on there under See on Camera. And if you have been listening for a while, you will know that I am a sex worker. Someone actually asked me on Twitter today, like, I didn't know you were a sex worker. I'm just like, my sex worker account and you've been following my sex worker account for how long? It was just very interesting to me. But yes, I am a sex worker, have been for over a decade, started off as sugar baby, worked my way into stripping, still do that, did fetish things in person, not anymore. Now you can finally mainly online. And now I do this podcast because I think it's really important to tell the accurate, real stories of sex workers and not the glamorized ones that get super sensationalized. And because it can be really different than reality. So if it is your first time tuning into the show, I do bring different guests on every single week to talk about their little corner of the industry, whether they are on-screen talent, they're in full service, they're a director, producer, they are part of a nonprofit organization or charity. I like diversity and I like having a really broad range to, again, really illustrate, what our industry is all about in a accurate way. So thanks for tuning in. The show's been on since 2019. We are well into season 7 now, which is really super exciting. Thank you all. I super appreciate you. And speaking of appreciation, I'm just going to quickly say hello to my Patreon subscribers. You're the ones that help keep my website funded. That is exactly where your funds are going. They used to go to funding myself to go to adult industry events and conventions and stuff, but I just don't really have that time in my schedule, nor do I have those type of funds. And Patreon does not it's not like tons of money making all that stuff, but I do appreciate for those who do find value in the show because it is free resources and honestly knowledge should be free. So that's why I do the show every single week for y'all. So just want to quickly say hello to all of the top tier Patreon subscribers. Just going to give you a quick shout out. Folks from Germany, USA, Canada, all over the place. Snoo, hello. Geyser, we've got Selena Money, Eric Rajo, we've got Bia York, McKenna King, Red Door Products. Thank you so much for your continued support over the past few years. It's been really amazing and truly humbling. If you are interested in becoming a patron, it is patreon.com/stripbysia with tiers as low as $4 a month. And again, all that money goes towards my website currently, website hosting. And from there, you can access exclusive bonus episodes, all the video content before and ahead of the general public and before YouTube and all that stuff too. So go check it out. Again, it's patreon.com/strippedbysia. So this week we're talking all about the trans experience. And I think it's really important to talk about that because obviously, for myself, growing up here in the East Coast, West Coast, I feel like I've been in a very lucky, privileged place where it is very normal, very, very normal. But gender identity, gender politics, trans folks, trans rights, like it's having a moment right now. And it's a bit on the scary end, if I'm going to be honest, in terms of like legislation, laws that are trying to outlaw and eliminate trans voices and trans inclusivity. So I think it's really important, especially since time of recording, it's Pride Month. I think it's really important for us to elevate the voices of trans folks because I was really inspired by a post that I saw on Twitter or X or however people want to call it. In my mind, it's forever going to live as Twitter. But I did come across a tweet that kind of, it like made me upset in a way. And our guest today, Nugs, who I will be interviewing and chatting with today on his experience, I want to just maybe, actually, Nugs, can I ask if I can read out what the tweet, like the screenshot said.
Yeah.
I had to like re-scroll down your Twitter to like find out. I was like, oh my gosh, when was this? But basically, to give you all context for the inspiration of this episode, it was a texting screenshot. This person says, "Hi, not trying to fight or poke fun at you. Just wondering if it's true if you're trans or not. / someone said that in chirp before. You don't look it, that's for sure. Meh, never mind." And for myself, like when I came across that, I had so many feelings that kind of came over my mind, and also like a visceral response to that, because there's just a lot to unpack there. It's like the expectation of demanding of an answer, asking this person directly if they're trans or not. That like is so personal. There's no sense of personal boundaries here. So there's just a lot of stuff, and I am bringing on today's guest, who goes by the name of Nugs, to speak about this and to speak about his experience in a time of transition too, which is already a really painful and challenging time. So with that being said, and thank you for everyone's patience in the long-winded introduction today, but I think it's really important to get some context that can lay the foundation of today's episode. So please welcome to the show, Nugs.
Hi.
Hi. Hello, and this is just what I gathered from the internet, Nugs, but Nugs is a full-service sex worker based somewhere in Canada, on the East Coast, and we'll be talking about, again, your experience. And I don't know if you want to start there, if you want to start in terms of like how you got into the industry first, and we can kind of loop it all back together. And
well, I've been in the industry for about going on 11 years now. And I started out, like when I first started in the industry, I had just moved away from a very conservative, religious like environment. And so it wasn't really until I got in this industry that I started actually experiencing like queer people in general and things outside of just that like small box that I'd been raised in, essentially. So I started out in the industry very like in my early 20s, fairly naive, not really knowing a whole lot, and really only seeing the world in black and white. And then I'm now in my almost mid 30s and a completely different person. So it's definitely been a journey. This industry has both helped and hindered it along the way, I'd say. But yeah, started out working at an agency, went independent, and kind of just gone from there. Now I do a mix between full service work and operating a glory hole, basically. Yeah, which I will probably bring up sometimes because it does tie in a little bit to like stuff that's been going on with trans stuff. So like, yeah. In general, that's what we mainly do now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a great like overview of like your career experience. I think we have a very similar timeline as well, too. I think I came into the industry about 11 or 12 years ago as well, and thus have changed a lot. Thus have learned a lot, because we were all babies coming into this industry, not knowing anything too, and then also like coming from, well, I came from like a really like Roman Catholic, super religious Filipino parents, Catholic school, like all of that stuff. I don't know if you want to share a bit more detail in terms of like talking about like agency work, going independent, stuff like that, and how it kind of got you to where you are right now.
That's very interesting. I mean, I kind of went from like customer service work and burning out extremely from that, and just with a friend, the two of us were like, I'd rather be sucking dick for money than doing what we're doing now. And we both just looked at each other and said we were serious and started the next day at an agency. The agency taught me everything I didn't want to do. Basically, it was some of my worst experiences, I'd say, in the industry, but the people that I worked alongside were fantastic. I made some fantastic friends. And then after a while, I kind of just realized that, like, yeah, you're not going to be treated properly. You're not even going to make good money there. They're kind of just running themselves into the ground, and decided to take it off myself, moved to Montreal, and that kind of was just like opening a whole new life, I guess, more than anything, because I went independent at the same time that I moved to Montreal, outside of like the conservative like suburbs that I'd been raised in, and kind of just got introduced to a whole new world, all new people, and being able to like run my business at the same time and discover, I guess, who I am along the way was very interesting and very fulfilling at the same time. Like definitely that period of time up until like probably when I started realizing that I was trans was a very good journey at being able to like find myself, get a good business going, and I don't know, just kind of like get out of where I was before and experience a new life more than anything, and experience, I guess, the world. And now we're kind of in a completely different phase of work. I wouldn't really specifically say positive or negative, but just very different, I'd say, than anything else. And the thing that kind of got us to where we were now was more my health than anything else, because I ended up having to change the way that I could work when my health took a turn. And then now we're kind of just not able to work to the same degree that we were when we were in our 20s, more than anything.
Yeah, no, I hear you with that. I mean, before we move on, Nugs, there's so many questions I have for you too. Like, it just sounds like you had a lot of things going on at the same time in terms of like your move to Montreal, you navigating, not like working independently and not with an agency. So no one there to like literally hold your hand, new experiences, new people, new city. And then also amidst all of this, also realizing that you were trans. Where can we start with all of this?
I feel like
a lot there.
It was definitely like, it took a while from like realizing that I'm not straight to then realizing I'm not cisgendered, but not really knowing who, where, or what kind of thing, and then like getting to where we are now. It took at least, I want to say, like a good almost 8 years in general, and it was a very eye-opening experience. I am very grateful that the industries allowed me space to like explore some of that, I guess, at the beginning. It's definitely hindered when I'm trying to transition to more masculine stuff. That's kind of where we're starting to have the issues. But when it was just the beginning of like breaking out of that, heteronormative, religious, conservative, like lifestyle that you've been raised on pretty much, it was this industry allowed me the opportunity to like explore who I was and just different things, I guess, more than anything. But it was around 2016 is probably when I started actually like having these like it was just meeting people who were different and realizing that I could be different too, and that I wasn't specifically just having to be who I was always told I had to be. And then kind of just went from there. From like, I think it was really around 2019, 2020 is when I kind of officially was like, all right, it's hard to play pretend anymore. We kind of need to start like really digging into like who we are and where we want to go with this. But that time between from about 2016 to then was just like, I don't know, exploring who we like could be, what the world has. I don't know, just like everything more than anything, which was fun.
Yeah,
it was a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this has anything to do with it too, but like, I mean, 2020 obviously was a pivotal year for many of us, and a big time for reflection. And we had we're left with so much time in our hands and left with ourselves that I guess you're really using that time to be like, you know what, I actually know who I am at this point, and taken the leap, which can be a very scary,
we're still in the
thing,
finding out who we are phase, unfortunately, but like working towards it at least.
Yeah, and that's a positive thing though, because like, as you mentioned, like your journey up until this point has taken 8 years, and 8 years, yes, it is a long time, but it does we need to take the time to get to know ourselves, right? Yeah.
I mean, I certainly,
really glad.
I think some of it, like especially the last like 3 years specifically, it's felt too long, I guess, in a way. And some of that is to do with like the industry and I guess how gendered it is and such. But it's it's very like pros and cons, I guess. Bittersweet love-hate relationship, I guess, in a way. If that makes sense.
Totally. No. That absolutely makes sense for sure. I mean, I would love, if you're comfortable, to go into a bit more detail too, in terms of like your own experience, because right now you are in the current position of transitioning from female to male, and trying to work with that with clients and stuff too. where do you want to start with that? Like maybe we can talk about just general struggles and general challenges that you have faced.
It's a lot. Harder. I don't even
Yeah.
necessarily know where to start, but like it's so many different levels. I mean, the big one is my body more than anything, because I am a survival sex worker, and kind of very much struggling day by day to even like keep a roof over my head or feed myself and my pets and such. So being able to change my entire work, I guess, in general, and like maybe possibly lose clientele has just been such a like the biggest thing is the thought of losing clientele and losing that business. And when I'm struggling to like make ends meet right now, has just frozen me, I guess, in a way, to the point that it feels like sometimes I've felt like I can't move forward with my transition in the way that I'd like, because I'm just still struggling to survive with the body that I have right now. Another aspect is
Right.
like how you'll be in a session with a client, and you can't see them right now, but I have very large chest basically, and they love that. And so a lot of times they'll like, touch you all over and talk about how you have the most womanly figure and such a feminine figure and this and that. And it might be on a particular hard day where you're really feeling dysphoric about your body, and suddenly now you're just like, you are dissociating, you wish you could crawl out of your skin. Like, it's just, yeah. So sometimes that's been very difficult in general. It's, yeah, the fact also that there isn't that much information out there about, like, when you look at trans providers in the industry. I mean, the industry is changing a lot over the last like 2 years, I'd say, but previously it was really just trans women. And so when trying to find information about, provide sex workers who had transitioned from female to male, there wasn't a lot of information to kind of find out, I guess, what might happen or what their experiences were. And so it kind of felt like going into it blindly, I guess, and not really knowing what the outcome is, but fearing worst case scenario, and then just not doing the things that I know would be good and healthy for me because I was too scared, I guess, because of my survival. Um,
Yeah. That's validating
yeah.
though.
And it's, yeah, I don't know. I kind of have to get used to the fact that I'm misgendered on the regular and like am cosplaying as a woman, I guess, for the most part. I get accused of a lot of not great things because of that, but at the same time, the way that our advertising works with the industry, there's not really anything else I can do until I'm passing, at the other side, pretty much. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll definitely be going into detail, talking about advertising, talking about like rebranding, remarketing yourself, and going through all of that. But um, I was struck by something you said there in terms of like, at this point, like I'm going to be like, I'm disassociating myself at this moment. And this is like during a session with clients and stuff too. How do you navigate that when you're combated and you're met with two combating things at the same time? You are needing to do this work because we need money. We need to, provide a roof over our heads, feed ourselves and stuff like that. So you need this to survive. But at the same time, you're being met with this contradicting feeling like, I have to do this to survive, but I feel like I cannot be myself right now. How do you navigate through
Like,
that?
some days are easier than others. There's some days where like being able to put on like a work uniform is a lot easier, and I can kind of just get in that headspace, and clients saying things about my figure and this and that doesn't really have an effect. But there's other days where I'm already struggling, and those are the hard days, because then the things that they say really does have an effect, and it does like get into that, I guess, past the armor that you're trying to keep more than anything. But how I handle it, uh, lots of therapy, and hope that that's going to help for the most part. Um, in session, I'm not very good at it. I usually end up just dissociating and going through. I mean, I've been in the industry long enough that when I dissociate, my body just goes through the routine pretty much, because at this point, doing sex work is like muscle memory, I guess, almost in a way. So, like, when I dissociate, my body's just going to go through the call and finish it pretty much, which is not good and healthy. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I'm trying to like work on, so that we don't get in situations like that. One of the things that I've done over the last like 2 years is getting better and more self-aware when I'm in those like moods. and knowing that I possibly am going to have clients saying or doing certain things that are going to be upsetting. And if I have the ability, maybe reschedule or try and see them at a different time. If I don't have that ability, mentally prepare yourself as best you can, I guess, and try and do some like care work afterwards. But yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was going to ask about like any kind of care work that you're doing for yourself, like cuz these are like, pretty intense coping strategies that you
not
have to do for survival.
I'm
Not much.
the thing
That's
is
hard.
like
That's hard.
I'm still trying to work on how to like I come from a very like traumatized background, and so I'm still working a lot on learning how to be kind to myself and like take care of myself, I guess, in a way, because it's not something that I was taught or learned how to do, basically. And when you're never really been taught how to be kind to your own self or take care of yourself, it's very hard to do, and it's very hard to learn as an adult. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out right now. I think that's kind of where we're in the stage right now, is how to actually like care for ourselves in a way that's going to be good and healthy for us and keep us grounded in like who we are. Because there have been a lot of moments over the last like 3 years where I just start, it almost feels like regression, where I'll just say this is easier. Maybe just being a woman is easier, and just letting them like staying in the body that I'm in and letting all this happen is just going to be easier, I guess, more than anything. But then I also remember that half the time that makes me very depressed and suicidal. So it's not really specifically easier. So it's like,
No.
yeah, it's a very like hard balance, I guess. And I'm figuring it out. We're still working on it more than anything.
And that's totally fine too. And I am sure people listening at home as well, or whatever they are listening right now, would respect the rawness and the truthfulness that you have here. Cause it's, I have had guests on, they're like, oh, I do this and this and this, but like, it's really refreshing actually to be like, I actually don't know what the hell I'm doing right now. And I'm figuring it out, and I will get back to you once I have figured something out.
One day. I mean, that's my totally biggest thing that we work on in therapy right now, is how to actually be kind to myself and take care of myself. And it's a process. It's going to be a bit of a process. So we're still working on that more than anything.
No, yeah. And everything is almost going to be a work in progress too. Like, I think it's important and really great and admirable that you are actually, at least you have a therapist. Like, that's amazing.
Bless her, she's fantastic. I'll say that. At least she's like been fantastic through all of this, at least. So, and very good with my sex work too as well.
Yay.
So yeah.
Yay, I was going to be like, this is a sex work friendly therapist.
Like, especially when I would have to like go from like, because at the very beginning when I first started realizing like I'm trans and I really need to start exploring what this means and where I want to go with that kind of thing, I couldn't do full service anymore. I could not handle clients touching my body. I couldn't handle the comments. And so I went to just do the glory hole, because then I'm just behind a curtain. They're not really touching me for the most part. They're not really seeing me for the most part. And it was easier just to kind of like be a hole pretty much. And then that way I had a little bit more like flexibility and freedom to like, that's when I was able to shape my head, and kind of just like actually start dressing and being a little bit more like what I wanted to be. But when I try to go from like the glory hole back to full service, I talk to my therapist about it and be like, this is what I'm going to be doing, and this is what I'm worried about. And she'd actually like talk me through it and such. So like, she's been very good, and she's been trying to like learn as best she can about my work to be able to help me as effectively as she can. So I'm very blessed to have her, I'd say.
Oh, that's so good to hear. I mean, I also want to hear more about like how you've kind of repositioned yourself too, but maybe we can start in terms of like when you first started transitioning and what that looked like to you, and currently where you're at with that.
So it was a couple of years ago. It was like around a bit before the pandemic. It was really rough because I didn't understand what the feelings were at first, especially because I've never really like been around queer folks very much. And so I was still kind of learning a lot of this stuff. So for at least a good first like year or so, it just felt like being like playing up as and being a woman was painful, like physically painful. And I didn't know and understand that was because that like I was trying to be something I wasn't, and it was hurting me along the way. So for at least a good like year, I don't know, I kind of went the opposite direction and tried to instead like make myself more feminine, wondering if that would fix it. It didn't at all. Actually,
No. Did that backfire?
Yeah.
Like,
it actually just ended up feeling
my
way more
gosh.
uncomfortable, way worse. And so that's when we went and just were like, okay, clearly that's not where we're trying to go with that. So for the first year, it was very confusing. I didn't understand what the emotions and the feelings were. I know I was feeling stuff and feeling like different about myself and my body in general, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. And it wasn't until about a year later that I started really finding the words, being able to like express what it was, being able to explore it a little bit better. And it was around the same time when I also got diagnosed autistic, which was interesting because I think it's when I first got diagnosed autistic, the ability to mask became almost impossible for a bit because I just spent most of my life pretending that at that point when they kind of were like, yeah, that's basically what you've been doing. You're autistic and you've been masking so hard your entire life that I kind of just, it all just like went down. And with that, my like playing up gender went down too as well. I couldn't do it anymore. I just like, I did not have the energy to do it anymore. And so that's kind of when I ended up shaving my head. I ended up just going with the glory hole so that I wouldn't have to be face out for work anymore. I stopped kind of just like, I stopped taking pictures of myself for work and started just kind of like, I don't know, trying to find myself outside of, I guess, my work persona, because that's the only person I'd been for like the last year, couple years before then.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm probably rambling like a lot and getting a little.
No, not at all. It's totally fine. You're doing great, actually. Like, I'm just listening and observing and everything. But like, maybe if I can interrupt too, but like, you realizing, okay, I'm gonna really lead into this. I realize I am trans, and now with that realization, having to shift how you conduct business and shift how you're going to be working. How was that in figuring out, okay, we're going to go with the glory
That
hole
was
route?
hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, okay, let if
like at
you
least
don't
for a
mind,
good,
if you don't mind sharing, I'd love to
no,
hear
by all
from it.
means. But like for the first 2 years, it was definitely just like a huge. When I was officially like transitioning, this is when I'm coming to terms with it, and we're gonna like, which I want to say has been the last like 4 years, give or take. At the very beginning, it was just like such a struggle, I guess, more than anything. Sorry, I got distracted for a minute. Can you repeat the question just so that I can remember?
Oh yeah, like in just terms of like how did you come up with this is where I'm going to go in terms of like work, because like obviously it's a huge shift and a lot of like what the fuck am I going to do?
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so that's, I think at first when I was trying to do the like I'll go more feminine thing, my route was like maybe if I just put on more of like I guess a cosplay, I guess in a way, I can just like be who I really want to be in my free time. But I was finding that I don't have that like shut off, I guess, between who I am at work and who I was. At least I didn't. I'm getting better at that now. But for a long period of time, I just kind of was absorbing too much of actually who I was within my work persona. And so trying to transition away from that when so much of myself and my survival's tied to that, it was like, it just felt impossible in a way. And so I kind of think I just like, I was trying to take as like few steps as I could while also still being able to like work and make a living at the same time. Which was again, yeah, very strong. I don't think I was doing things very well for the first little while. At least for the first 2 years, I really don't think I was doing things very well in a healthy way. I was struggling. I definitely felt like I was regressing or at least stunted in my transition for the first 2 years. It's really only been the last 2 years that I really feel like I'm starting to actually like get to a healthier place and start to actually like move forward, I guess, in the way that I'd like to, and
Good.
understand what that might look like in terms of work too as well. So
Right.
yeah, which I can do,
Yeah.
do you mind me talking, I guess, a bit about what that might to me look like, I guess?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm really curious to hear what that's going to be. Like, absolutely.
So
the floor is yours.
for the first 2 years, I didn't really see any representation of trans men who had transitioned like while being a sex worker, who had gone from like, a feminine persona to that. And so it was hard with no representation to really understand how, I guess, it was going to affect my work. But around that like two-year mark, I read an article from someone. I had a friend of mine who actually transitioned in the same way, and we had very similar personas. So it was that was probably the most helpful thing, I think, was seeing someone who was in a similar like place where I was before, successfully transitioned and how they did it. So they all kind of said the same thing. You are going to lose clients. There's going to be a period of time where you're going to have very little work and it's going to be a struggle. After that, you're going to get better clientele who's going to actually be seeing you like for you more than anything and being respectful. So for myself, what I was planning to do is plan to get like my surgery and start hormones and such when I'm able to save up enough to actually take that time off and have a bit of extra like pocket, I guess, available in case
a
I
little
do
extra
lose all my
cushion.
clientele and like, yeah, so that if that does end up happening, at least I'm not, screwed and end up homeless basically more than anything. Yeah. And so hopefully it was going to be like save up as much as you can so that by the time you're able to actually get surgery, you're okay, you're secure, you're able to do that. And then once that's done, rebrand. And just like you're going to have a new name, you're going to have new photos, and then you're going to just go all in with like the new, you're going to actually be trans when you advertise kind of thing. So that's my plan in my eyes. It's going to take a while, and I definitely am not financially secure enough to get to that point yet. And my biggest fear is starting testosterone before surgery because I'm afraid of violence at work. I don't know if that makes sense to people who aren't doing like the glory hole, I guess, more than anything, but like clients can be very homophobic sometimes. And so with the glory hole, they're terrified that there's a man behind there is, but like, but they're always afraid that it's like some dude trying to scam them who's going to like, or something like that. And so I'm worried that if my voice starts changing as I'm transitioning before I'm able to like fully advertise myself as trans, if I'm still advertising as Amber and then they're showing up and getting a dude's voice, I'm worried they're going to be violent in a way or something might happen.
Yeah.
So I kind of was just hoping to like put all of it, like save up so that when it all happens, I can kind of start it all at the same time and then really just go all in. I don't know if that's the right way to do it. That's kind of just, I guess, how we're figuring it out. But yeah, ideally it's going to be next year is when we're really going to try and like, yeah. So we've had our like consultation for surgery and such, and we're working through that. So we're like closer than we've been before, but it's still just like the financial thing. And yeah, getting to I guess more than that point, but we're working towards it.
We're working towards it. And you have a plan. At least you have a freaking plan. Because not just, like I feel like with this, you absolutely need to really have some kind of rubric in place because it's financials, it is changing your gender, it is a lot of physical changes. It's a lot. And even when I've talked to folks that I've done episodes on like like breast implants and those folks also having to save up a whole bunch because I'm gonna to take the time off, rest,
because clients like to touch boobs a lot and they get really rough sometimes.
Yes, they do. Yes, and you're just like, I'm gonna be out of commission for X amount of months.
On the bright side, I don't know if this is like related or not, but I'm like one of my biggest advertisements is my boobs, and so when I'm getting rid of that, I'm going to try and do like a Canada-wide goodbye boobs tour and just try and make as much bank as I can off them before they're gone, basically. But yeah,
of course, gonna market the shit out of those boobs.
Get them before they're gone. More than anything.
Exactly. No, I think you have a great plan in place. Nugs, really great to hear this too. I mean, it's shitty in a way in terms of like, when folks and clients can be homophobic, they can also be transphobic as well too. We're seeing a huge increase in that lately as well. Going back to like that screenshot text that we're talking about at the top of the episode too, how has been your experience? Like, have you unfortunately dealt with transphobic people?
Yes.
Now that you're starting to slowly,
like I wasn't really wanting to come out specifically until I was pretty much preparing to like until I had surgery, like date set up, and I was really getting into it. I didn't really want to come out, I guess, more than anything, because I do know what the demographic and clientele is like here in town, and I know that they are very like review boards are violent when it comes to trans people in general, like especially trans women, but like it's they're the clients down here are not the type that would be very accepting in general. So I didn't
Accepting.
Yeah. So I didn't really want to like come out until it was pretty much ready to like lead into that and making like an announcement. But I started getting people making threats, saying that I was sexually assaulting my clients by not telling them that,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. And,
Wow.
a couple people were like, if you don't announce on Twitter, like to tell your clients that you're a man or whatever, that they're sleeping with a man, then we will. And so I kind of just ended up making like a little post on Twitter about it. And I guess someone posted it on a review board. I don't actually know what happened, but clients that ended up, I guess, seeing it. And then I started getting messages from people being like, are you trans? And this and that. But they don't understand what trans means. They only believe, like when they think of trans, to them, it only means trans women. That's all that they like. And when it comes to the advertising inner industry, that's all that they see too as well. Like when you go on the trans, which it's still considered, if you look on Leo List, which is like the main advertising website for my area, it's the transsexual escorts. It's male, female, transsexual. Those are your options. And then when you go on the transsexual one, it's only trans women. And it's like, there's nothing else.
Right.
You very rarely will see like a trans man there. And so the clients here just don't have any understanding of anything outside of that. So when they hear trans, they think chick with a dick, basically. And so now they're all assuming that I'm like misleading them and false advertising and trying to trick them. And yeah, so it's been interesting trying to like, I don't know, because you want to like talk to them like they're like, how are you being this? Google's free. Like, go look stuff up.
No, I know.
But at the same time,
totally, I understand.
At the same time, it's like it's clients that you're trying to make money off of, so you're kind of also having to like, and you don't want them like running to the review boards and saying all this stuff, so you kind of have to like play it off in a. It's hard line to balance and not enjoyable to say the least. But yeah, some people have been not great here and there. I had one client who I guess he saw the review board or something, but he didn't mention it until he was here. And he said, I saw something about you being trans.
Oh.
And yeah. And that's kind of when I was like, trans doesn't specifically mean this. And he's just like, I don't understand. Like, do you have a dick? This and that. And he started kind of getting a little mad. But that's when I had to be like, I'm a woman, just whatever. Just chill. We're going to like forget any of this ever happened. But I don't know. It's just been very like trying to avoid the conversation as much as possible because most of them don't get it. They just don't understand. Which I don't understand because it's 2024 and there's a lot of knowledge out there, so I really don't get how we're still stuck at this. But
absolutely, it's a refusal of people that just don't want to understand or accept. Though, people have one view of what things are, and unfortunately, I actually feel like even the porn industry is not as inclusive when it comes to trans too, because you're the same thing as you say with review boards. It's the same thing in like porn as well. Like it's always like chick with a dick.
Yeah, and I noticed, I have noticed
for the majority
that, like,
of things.
A lot of trans porn performers have said that they've had to start their own like companies, make their own material because the like mainstream stuff isn't going to work with them for the most part, unless it's very like stereotypical, I guess, in a way.
Yes,
fetishizing to a certain degree.
Yes. 100% that it is fetishizing, because even like I feel trans folks are highly fetishized. Highly fetishized. And again, with the one definition or the one way that trans folks can look like, that's not the only way, people. Like it's very frustrating. But thank you for sharing, and I'm really sorry to hear that you've had to deal with.
I mean, I think I'm fairly lucky that like I've heard worse things with other trans providers who have had a lot more violence. So I think I'm fairly lucky that I've been able to avoid stuff for the most part. And I think probably having as like long as a reputation as like, because you can find reviews online talking about my genitals in detail. So like if they're wondering what's in my pants, it's out there very clearly. So like I think that probably helps to a certain degree, but like I've heard a lot of not great things from other providers who so it really seems like there needs to be more of an education for people out there, I guess, in general. Unfortunately, the industry is still very like stereotypical, generalized,
gendered.
Yeah. Which
gendered.
Like isn't really.
You also said that too.
The problem is like I find the world likes variety, and when you actually like offer up more variety and don't keep it specifically in that box, then people enjoy that. But like too much of the too much of the industry is still too hyper focused on like heteronormative, cisgendered everything being like the normal way, I guess. I don't know. It's very
Yeah. No, I see that a lot too. And then also just like coming from like, myself having attended like the AVNs for a couple of years now too, going to those award ceremonies and like how it's still like in my eyes, like still so old school and just reinforcing that stereotype and just those boxes. There's so much opportunity for major corporations and entertainment companies and adult entertainment companies to embrace and include trans folks. The fact that there has to be other award ceremonies that are just dedicated for trans folks and queer folks is very telling.
Yep.
It's very, very telling. So, but that's another topic for another time.
No, but even when you look at like the advertising, like myself transitioning.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, because like when I'm transitioning and people, like the people who are getting mad at me for not advertising myself as trans, but it's like when you're the only categories that you have is male, female, and transsexual, and everybody in the transsexual one is trans women, and I still, for the most part, like come across as a woman to people with the photos that I have and the fact that I still have ginormous tits, basically. So if I'm advertising as in the like transsexual section with the way that I look right now, people are going to assume that I have a dick for the most part. And that could get me more violence than anything else. So I stick with the female one because that just seems to make more sense to the clients who are looking for like to book me. But I don't know. They've got to make more categories. They've got to put more options because it's just very like limited and doesn't make sense. And then clients are getting mad that you're like tricking them or misleading them with your advertising. But like, you're kind of limited in the way that you can advertise.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. It's
Yeah. And whose fault is that? Like, I mean, there is going to be an episode, folks. I have been having so much trouble finding a good guest for an episode on dissecting review boards because it's such a topic of contention. It can be a very spicy topic.
They're like the bane of my existence these days, pretty much.
Yes. I'm sure. Like it's problematic because it's a whole like misleading thing. And I say that with quotations. Misleading or tricking your clients.
Yeah.
But you're like, well, I'm not.
Which is
that's not what my intention is. But
I don't know. It's just the people that I guess get angry that you're not telling people or telling clients. And then the clients who, if they've like hear the word trans, are like, well, why aren't you advertising as that? Or what does that mean? Like, does it mean that you have a dick and this and that? Like, apparently that same guy who'd sent me the text message that I put the screenshot of, apparently he was also messaging my duo partners to be like, I heard Amber's trans, like, what's going on? Does that mean that they have a dick? And like trying to like interrogate everybody around me to find out also. And it just feels very like they're trying to catch you out to go on this like witch hunt, I guess, in a way. But
it does feel witch hunt.
I don't know. It's weird. We've got to. It feels like a lot of the industry is still very outdated and needs to kind of catch up, which like a lot of the clients don't want to do, but they should because it's going to open a lot more doors for them if they do. Like you're going to have so much more variety of everything if you guys stop putting everything in a box. Basically, it's good for everyone.
Yeah, it is good for everyone. 100%. Another thing I want to mention too, I know we've kind of sprinkled it a little bit in this conversation, but I think it's actually really important to tackle the topic head on. But the topic of safety and violence towards trans sex workers. I mean, you were mentioning you consider yourself really lucky, really privileged to not have experienced maybe violence or as much violence as some of your other colleagues. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that because it's unfortunately a reality for sex workers in general, but more so with
because I have been hearing a lot of stories, unfortunately, of trans sex workers experiencing like increasing violence too as well. It seems like a lot of, especially because like trans sex workers are some of the most like at risk population within the sex worker community in general, and I think a lot of guys who think they can get away with doing harm will target the sex workers they think are not going to be cared about as much in general, which, like, no, we love and care about all our sex workers at the end of the day. But, like, it seems like a lot of times I'm noticing, like, when a sex worker will post that they got targeted by a particular person, it seems like they're seeking these trans sex workers out because they feel like that's the population that they'll be able to, like, get away with it. But it's and that's more than anything why we need solidarity with, like, all sex workers and not just the ones that, like, fit within your particular clique kind of thing, because the most at risk, if we keep letting them be targeted because that's what people believe, that, like, people don't care about them, then that's not good. We're like, I don't know. But for myself personally, my biggest fear when it comes to the violence is specifically just, like, if the testosterone starts changing my voice, starts changing, I guess, the way that I sound when they can't hear me, especially when so many of the clients coming to the glory hole are very homophobic, and they say that pretty clearly. Like, a lot of them will need me to, like, handhold and convince them that I'm not a man, because they're very, it's like they'll go
It's the
through the booking and
convincing
they'll be
too.
like,
My
are you
goodness.
sure you're not a man? Like, are you sure this isn't a dude? Like, I don't want to go there and find out there's a dude behind the curtain kind of thing. So, like,
Yeah.
my biggest fear is that does end up, like, my voice changes and I sound more like a man, and still using my pictures that, like, to them appears to be a woman, and then they get here and get mad and something happens.
Yeah.
I've been lucky that, and, like, that's one of the reasons why I'm not starting hormones now,
Yeah.
which I think has
Yeah.
led a lot of people to, like, I've had some people, because of the fact that I haven't started testosterone or had top surgery yet, tell me I'm, like, faking it and such. Yeah, I get that a lot. Yeah.
What the
I get
hell?
people telling me I'm
Oh
faking it a
man.
lot, where it's very hard to explain that it's actually just that the process is very long, and especially when your survival and ability to make a living is tied to your, like, feminine body.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my biggest fear, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've been so, like, stunted in going forward as much as I'd like with, like, starting tea and this stuff. It's just been that fear of, like, what might happen with these homophobic clients, pretty much more than anything. So yeah, I think more than anything, keeping things on the down low and trying not to be as, like, open and out about it has protected me, unfortunately. And also just having the reputation that I've had for years prior, so at least clients know, like, who I am, that I'm like this and that, and they know they can very easily look up, like, my body parts and this and that. I think that's protected me. Um, yeah, I've heard from some other sex workers who aren't as passing, that they do end up facing a lot more, like, hatred, vitriol, I guess, violence in general. Yeah, I don't know how to weigh in much on that more than anything, but I do feel like I'm in a more privileged position, with my experiences, I guess, in that aspect. Probably because I've been so scared and so been so, like, trying to avoid certain things
Yeah.
because of that. But so it's, like, not good, but it's also good at the same time. I don't know. It's yeah,
No. You unfortunately you have to do what you have to do in order to protect yourself, to ensure that you're keeping yourself safe as well. So, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that bit of insight, because it's like an elephant in the room. Like, we have to talk about
yeah,
that stuff. There's a lot of ugly stuff that happens in this industry, and I've never been the one person to sugarcoat anything like that too, because um, violence does happen a lot in our industry, whether you like to hear that or not.
yeah. And that's
But
the problem is, like, a lot of sex workers are afraid to talk about the harsh realities and, like, the dangerous realities of our industry in case it gets used by, like, anti-sex work people to, like, go
and
after the
that too,
industry and this and that. But, like, we should be able to freely talk about our experiences in the industry, the good, the bad, the ugly, without it being used to
absolutely.
try and attack, like, our means of survival more than anything. But
Yes.
yeah, it's there's a lot of violence in the industry, and especially it's been increasing in the last couple of years. And
Mm-hmm.
I think people getting a better understanding of the world, people in general, like, the variety of different genders, sexualities, everything could help with bringing down violence, because I feel like people, if they understand things better, are going to be less, like, angry and afraid at everything. I don't know, but, like, I just feel like people need to open their minds better. than anything.
No,
I just
I'm
feel
with
like guys
you.
are too outdated with this. It's still just very like stuck in the 70s, 80s. I don't know.
Yeah, 80s. Yeah, it's really, 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 really behind on that stuff too. There are a few more questions I would love to kind of pick your brain, Nugs. I know we're almost at the end of our time here, but talking about clients and how have your clients received this information? Have you disclosed to them that you are trans and are currently going to be in the process of transitioning and transitioning Amber out? Or is this a conversation you have yet to plan? And what does that look like to you?
So a couple clients that I talked to, this was more at the beginning when I was like first transitioning. I tried to kind of like, it was ones that I felt a little more comfortable with trying to like talk to them about it. They didn't understand what it was. It just, they seemed very confused, assumed that I was a trans woman kind of thing. And so I just didn't have the energy to get into it, especially when they're like at the glory hole or something like that.
Right.
There's about 2 or 3 clients who clearly know that I'm speaking transparently about this and being open, and they have still been very like supportive and everything, but I think they also don't really know much about it, but I think they're trying to learn. And I think they're trying to learn without asking.
That's good.
Yeah. So like those guys are good.
That's a good thing.
Because they're some of my favorite clients too as well. Yeah. So like I've got about like 3 or 4 that are being good, and they're still being like very supportive and everything. And I think that they're trying to like not ask invasive questions. I think they're trying to just like listen and learn more than anything, which like, yay.
Yay.
And then there's just, so there's the ones that I did tell they didn't really understand, the ones that have heard and are kind of just like supporting in the way that they know how at the moment. And then there's the rest of them that I kind of just don't tell or don't mention it for the most part. Some of them saw the like review on one of the boards, and they kind of like ask and bring it up here and there, and I try to diffuse the situation as best I can, but like for the most part I don't bring it up. I try not to feed into whenever they continually call me like a woman, this and that, because for me it ends up making me feel dysphoric too as well. But I also am just trying to like slowly lean more towards androgyny and hopefully get them towards that, so that when we do get there, it's like not as much of a shift, I guess, and getting them a little more. It's like dipping your toe in the water to get used to the like. Yeah.
It's warming up. It's getting used to it. Interesting. I mean, in relation to this conversation too, talking about, I guess, next year when you are fully transitioned, when you have done your surgery, but starting that process of rebranding yourself and remarketing yourself, have you given that any thought to that?
Yes. Actually, a lot of fun. I'm very excited.
Yes. Yay.
I've got like a whole name picked out. My photographer that I used to shoot with, I'd love to be able to like get a client to like sponsor a photo shoot afterwards, so I can like get new photos, so I can like put the whole rebrand and everything. So like I feel like I know what I'd really like to put into that. I'm getting very excited about it. It's just more the financial aspect of it that's like the most reality checking, I guess, than anything. But like, yeah, I've thought about it a lot. I'm trying to keep it a surprise. Because I'd like to, I think it's just like, for me, it's something that I'm looking forward to. And I think I don't want to like put it out there and have hateful people like ruin, I guess, that thing that I'm excited about, I guess, in a way. So I'm like talking transparently about the transition, but I'm going to keep that like rebranding, I guess, a bit of a secret until we get there. But I am very excited. I've got a name. I've got like in my mind a website. Like I know where I'm going to go. I know the like theme, or like, I guess for like when I was doing Amber, it was more like pinup style and this and that. So I kind of already know like what I'm going to market myself as, I guess, in that way and such. So hopefully things work out and we're able to get to that spot. That'd be nice. But I'm going to keep some of it a secret for now.
Under wraps, as you should. Yeah, because I think that's going to be a huge moment and a time to celebrate as well too. So it's nice to kind of keep things to yourself, and like obviously like in a world where everything is shared, overshared all the time too, it's nice to keep things under wraps.
Yeah,
and
I'm also just like one of those superstitious people where I don't want to jinx it.
I'm the same way as well. I'm the same way. I'm like, I will give you like maybe hints and little like little teasers, but not a lot, because like it's gonna be a moment. Right? Yeah, it'll be iconic, so, and very powerful.
Hopefully next year we will get to that spot where we can like be the new, because like I would really like to rebrand. I feel like I'm dragging around a dead, like not a dead body, but like just a corpse pretty much with my old persona. It's not me. It doesn't fit anymore. It doesn't work. I'd really like to it's who I was in my 20s. It's not the provider I am in my 30s. So I'd really like to like actually lean into that rebranding. But I feel like it's hard to do that when I still kind of look for the most part, and I still have a lot of the same clientele from before, and they still remember me as Amber. So yeah, we're kind of just, I think, leading up to it, and hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later. But see.
Totally. Well, lots of things to look forward to for next year, I'm sure. I guess a final question for you too, like when you are kind of planning this rebrand, this new version of yourself, saying goodbye to Amber, have you also thought about that too, and how you're wanting to do that? Because I know you mentioned like maybe it's gonna be a tour.
It's actually
stuff
very
like that.
interesting. I don't think I've really thought about it. I know it's come to mind, but I don't think I've really thought about it until you just mentioned it now. And now I'm like, that's something I want to think about. I definitely know, like before, like when I have the surgery date and I know that we're leading up to it, I'm gonna plan a tour to try and just go like coast to coast, because I've you know, from the time I was in my early 20s to then, I've got clients from all over who like they used to book me for like boob worship and stuff. So even though I hate it and it makes me dysphoric, if I can make a bunch of money off of it, that like, let's do it. So
hell yeah.
Ideally, whenever we get like the surgery scheduled, I'm going to try and plan like a big tour before then. And that's more going to be for like trying to get that like nest egg to be able to survive on after. I don't know what to do about saying goodbye to Amber in general, because that is going to be probably like emotional in a way, because so much of like my life in like a whole decade was just Amber, I guess, in a way, and like so much of myself. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that, but I do know I'm gonna want to. It's gonna be heavy and it's gonna be emotional. It's probably gonna be a little more private too, I think, because like it's a very personal thing. But definitely gonna do the whole like boob going away tour kind of thing beforehand.
So I'll have to stay tuned. I mean, this has been such a great conversation, Nugs. Thank you so much for being vulnerable with me today. No, it's been very just enlightening, insightful as well, very raw. And I hope that this conversation can speak to someone in a certain way, or can connect. Because like, as we were saying before, like trying to find resources or folks where you can actually relate to it has been very difficult. So I'm hoping that this can also serve as another resource for folks who are also going from the same transition as well. So
thank you so much for having me on here and letting me be open. So I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you for, responding to my invite. And I'm super stoked to have you on today. But before we let you go, where can we all find you if you want to be found?
So on Twitter, my work handle is Amber Glory Hole, all one word. So just Amber, AMBER, Glory Hole, basically. I don't know if I'm anywhere else on social media. I think that's it. Oh, on TikTok, I'm Purse Nuggets 4.0. If you're on TikTok, Purse Nuggets 4.0, pretty much. But I think that's pretty much it.
Awesome. All of the links will be available in the show notes below. So feel free to go ahead and hit follow, subscribe, do whatever you got to do, peoples. And everyone else, your homework, as you all know, listen to the show, rate 5 stars. You can do that on Spotify and Apple. If you have time, I'd love for you to write a review. If you have been enjoying this, you find value in this, please take the time to do that, because it just really helps for other people to find the show in terms of like discoverability and whatnot. If you want to get in touch with me for some reason, please do. I am on X, which I'm probably the most active on there. So it's Steph Sia. You can contact me there. Also on Instagram, Steph Sia podcast, because my old one was suspended. And you can find me there as well. My website, if you want to be on the show, it's strippedbysia.com. You can click the contact button there and you can kind of go ahead and pitch yourself. I am actively recruiting for season 7 with the most interesting topics this season. And I think that's all the links that I'd like to share in relation to my podcast. If you want to find my spicy links, they're findable. You do that. This show isn't to promote me. But it is new episodes every single Sunday, dropping at midnight. thank you so much, Nugs, for joining me today. I truly appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story today.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You too. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellandarama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.